On your Wednesday episode of Locked On Raptors, I'm not fearing the deer, but Camille Davis from Locked On Bucks is going to tell me why that's right or wrong as we continue our run through the middle of the Eastern Conference on today's show. Thanks for hanging.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Wednesday, September the 10th, I think, as I project days ahead of time on my vacation pre-recording schedule. I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 11 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on Blue Sky. You can find the show on Instagram. You can join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server, link in the description of the podcast. It's 100% free to join. On today's show, it's a crossover edition of Locked On Raptors and Locked On Bucks with Camille Davis, who we spoke with earlier this offseason when there was all kinds of scuttlebutt about the future of Giannis Antetokounmpo. Guess what? We're going to talk about the future of Giannis Antetokounmpo because you got to do it when you're talking about the Milwaukee Bucks. And we'll also get into how these teams figure to stack up in the middle of the Eastern Conference, as we've been doing all week. We did the Pacers on Monday. We did the Pistons on Tuesday. Today, we continue our tour of the Central Division, apparently, and it's all about the Bucks. Camille, how the hell's it going?
It's going pretty good. Football starting back. Well, as we record this and people are hearing this, football, we had our first weekend of NFL football, so excited about that. Hopefully, I'm not looking crazy for having this Packer jersey on next week when this actually airs, but, you know, my team is always going to be my team, so it's cool. I'm feeling great. How about you?
I don't know about you, Camille. Football season's been going on since about June, and the Hamilton Tiger Cats are the top of the Eastern Conference in the CFL. So I'm thrilled. Yeah. I gather the Packers got a good guy last week in a trade. That's fun. Good for them. I know nothing about the NFL, as my listeners know extremely well, although I am dipping my toes back in this year because my friends really wanted me to play fantasy football. So I might become a Lions fan, though, so we might be butting heads over that, too. But back to things we usually butt heads over, the Raptors and Bucks. Two teams, I think, squarely in the middle of the Eastern Conference this year. By the middle, I mean like the 4 through 10 range of what is a pretty wide-open conference. I think the number of games that will separate the 4th seed from the 10th seed this year is probably not all that many. And I think the Raptors and Bucks find themselves very much in that mix. We will get into the sort of respective builds of these teams, Camille, and I'm curious if you have anything to throw my way about the Raptors, who I know confuse you so. But let's start with the big thing. Giannis is still on the team. Didn't get traded this summer. Seems like it never really even got sort of close. The Thanasis is back. It might just be all sunshine and roses now. What is the status of the Giannis thing as it stands going into this season? Do you think there is any world in which the trade stuff gets reignited if the Bucks start poorly, or is this really just going to come down to next summer when he has that extension opportunity and he signs or does not sign it, and then we'll kind of go from there?
Yeah, I don't like to speak in absolutes because that can make you look real foolish.
That's podcasting, though, Camille. Come on.
I know. I'm not like the hot takey podcaster. What I will say about it is this. As the summer went on and more things continued to happen, I think when we talked, I was a little bit nervous about what might happen because it was really all on Giannis. It's not a Milwaukee Bucks directive to look to trade Giannis. It was only if Giannis asked out. Was I be okay with the idea of the Bucks trading Giannis? And from everything we've heard so far this summer, he's on board with, being with the team this summer or this upcoming season, at least for the beginning of it. As Shams had to point out when he announced the fact that the Thanasis was signing with the team as well on a guaranteed deal, at a 1-year guaranteed deal. So honestly, I think that Giannis is on the Milwaukee Bucks this season, past the trade deadline. I think next offseason, again, is when all of this ramps up all over again about what's going to happen next with Giannis.
Well, one thing that we do know is that the guy who was the Captain Ahab to Giannis's Moby Dick is no longer running the Toronto Raptors in Masai Ujiri. I would assume that if he's available once again next summer and there's conversations, the Raptors will still throw their hat in the ring because, Masai's not the only guy in the Raptors front office who likes Giannis Antetokounmpo. One would assume if that's not the case, then they probably hired the wrong guys. But that's like a sort of, I suppose, an interesting wrinkle towards the Raptors and their prospective interest. They always felt like they were very connected because Masai and Giannis have a relationship going back. That's obviously no longer a thing they can lean on anymore. But Camille, let's get into the offseason for the Bucks. They pick up Miles Turner in a bit of a surprise, shocker move. John Horst pulling at all the stops as he usually does. Cole Anthony, bring back a bunch of meh dudes.
I can see on your face you're not liking none of this, huh?
I'm not fearing the deer, Camille. I think this team, outside of Giannis, stinks out loud. And they'll win a lot of games because Giannis is incredible. But Kyle Kuzma might have been the worst player who played regular minutes in the NBA last year. Kevin Porter Jr., gross. I just doesn't do it for me as a player. Gary Trent Jr., I saw that experience firsthand. I'm all good. Cole Anthony, you were on the Orlando Magic, the team that badly needs guards, and they were like, no, we're good. I don't know, man. Again, Giannis might carry them to 45 wins, but I am very skeptical after this offseason, even with the Miles Turner addition. Who's going to play guard on this team and do it well, Camille? Tell me I'm wrong here.
I feel very differently about this Bucks team than you do, in large part because at the end of last season, when Dame had the blood clot issue, you saw what this Bucks team had to look like with one singular superstar, and that superstar being Giannis. And what the Bucks like to do was run point Giannis. Let's let him initiate the offense. Teams aren't going to press him full court like they do certain guards because of the threat of once he gets past you, what can happen. And then you just surround him with shooters. Like you mentioned, the Gary Trent experience in Toronto, the Gary Trent experience in Milwaukee started off slow, but he turned into being the type of player that this team needs, which is a guard that can knock down the three, play some defense, and run. And that's the direction the Bucks have moved in this offseason. Is we're no longer an old team. We are a young team. Yes, there are a lot of guys on the roster that you can point to of being like, this is a year. If they take a leap, then I can see the team being this, but they don't, then it is what it is. But they like the guys they're taking a chance on with Gary Trent Jr., what we saw him do in the playoffs for this team, even though he had the turnovers at the end of that game. Yes, we know to lose it down the stretch there. But again, without Gary Trent Jr., you're not in that position anyways, because he went crazy from three. Kevin Porter Jr. did not have a good playoff run with the Bucks, but his run with the Bucks was so much improved over what you saw from him with the Clippers. I think part of it is just finding a home, finding a situation that he feels comfortable in. Doc Rivers really took a liking to Kevin Porter Jr., and he has a lot of opportunity here. The Bucks don't have the splashy names, but I think they have a lot of guys that are young and hungry. And if they pop, they can be really exciting, like the guard rotation with Gary Trent, Kevin Porter Jr., Ryan Rollins, who, again, not a name that a lot of folks know, but he's 6'3" with like a 6'10" wingspan, plays some hellacious defense, can knock down the three. You have AJ Green, who is a bona fide threat from three, need his volume to go up. Like the guard rotation is actually really solid with a lot of guys who can play that combo guard role off of Giannis. The front court, solid with Giannis and Miles Turner. You have Bobby Portis off the bench. You can have a change of pace big with Jericho Sims if you need to as well. Now the wing is where it gets a little, okay, because you do have Kyle Kuzma, you have Taurean Prince. That's my biggest question with this Bucks team is that wing rotation, but you could go smaller and play those guards there too. So I think the Bucks are going to be good this year.
Look, Giannis is incredible. Point Giannis. That's a compelling argument to me. We don't have any guards who can handle it, but don't worry, just give it to Giannis and get out of the way, and that's fine. That's a reasonable, I think, outline of a team that can win mid-40s in the Eastern Conference. Totally fair. I'm a little worried about Giannis having to do everything at age 31, having played just over the last 6 seasons here. And I guess one of these is a COVID year, a couple are COVID years. So take it with a grain of salt, but 63, 61, 67, 63, 73, 67. He picks up injuries. He's been hurt in the playoffs recently.
Chronic knee injury.
And I just don't see that this team has any ability to sustain if he's out for any period of time. And for me, Camille, I think, and we'll get into this later on, I just think depth is so important in the regular season to just accruing wins. And one major injury we've seen can really just kind of derail all your best laid plans. And obviously, I'm not hoping this happens for Giannis. He's incredible. He's unbelievable to watch and he's a joy, but it's just the reality of how rigorous the NBA is. And if you're ratcheting a guy's sort of usage up more, But now with no Damian Lillard again on the team,
Mhm.
no Brook Lopez to be this sort of backstop of the defense. Yes, Miles Turner is all right, but he's not Brook Lopez in his prime as a
Listen,
rim
what Brook
protector.
Lopez gave you last year, Miles Turner can do that.
Okay, fair enough. Brook Lopez was kind of cooked last year. I'll give you that one for sure. But I just think there's going to be a lot on his shoulders, his very, very large shoulders. And I just wonder if it might be too much to sustain like a lot of wins in the regular season, even if the Bucks get in the playoffs. I'm not picking Giannis to like go out easy against anybody, no matter who's on his team or who he's playing. We'll come back into the side here, Camille. I want to get into sort of your thoughts on the Raptors, because as much as I don't believe in that the Bucks, it seems like you maybe have similar feelings about the Raptors. We're going to get into that and continue on it. Maybe a little bit later on, get into the idea of RJ Barrett, Milwaukee Buck. We'll talk about that coming up a little bit later on as we continue with Camille on the Locked On Raptors, Locked On Bucks crossover. Camille, today's show is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. It's time to fuel up and win with 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. This grape, ginger, and lime flavored shot brings the iconic taste of a golf course favorite to a non-alcoholic boost, perfect for sinking birdies or making great memories with friends. It's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Do you like that flavor combo? Grape, ginger, lime? It sounds pretty. I've never had this drink that they're speaking of here, but Camille, sounds pretty good to me.
I'm here for anything with a little ginger. Like that's like my favorite flavor. I know it's strong, but I love a ginger.
I'm a ginger guy. I'm a lime guy. You can't really go wrong with either of those things. And yeah, 5 Hour Energy is going to help you get through your day, whether you're out on the golf course with friends, maybe you are getting ready to sort of prime yourself for late night basketball once again, and you're working on your sleep schedule, or maybe you're like me and you have a newborn at home who's awake all the time, just never sleeps. Go to bed. It's a wonderful thing for you to go and check out 5 Hour Energy. Now you can amp up the fun even more. Just buy, snap, and enter for a chance to win a dream golf trip for 2 to any golf tournament in the USA. That's a lot of fun. Tee up that trip. Visit 5hewin.com for full rules and entry. No purchase necessary. Excludes the Masters tournament, but all the other tournaments are right there for you. Ends October 31st, 2025. Go check it out. Back in here with Camille Davis. As we have established, we like ginger and lime flavored confections. Good stuff all around. We agree on that. We don't seem to agree on our basketball teams, but that's totally fine. Camille, I'll give you the floor. You're confused about the Raptors. I get it. Like I fielded this line of questioning from a few people already. I understand, but fire away. Let me swat down your preconceived notions like I'm prime Brook Lopez before he got cooked.
You know what I'm saying? And now let me be fair to Brook too. I think he is still a valuable center, but he is not the defensive player of the year candidate that he was a few years back. But the Raptors. Okay.
Yeah.
So when I think about the Eastern Conference, I actually broke the Eastern Conference down into 5 different tiers. I love tiering over just straight up ranking. So like my tier 1 was like my championship favorites. Like these teams should be seen as the best the East can offer. My tier 2 was kind of like, that's next up tier. If things break right, any of these teams could make it to the conference finals, and I wouldn't be surprised. Strong playoff teams. Tier 3 is my tier of confusion, where it's like these are the teams as to why the East is considered wide open. And then my 4th tier is like kind of rebuilding, but playing through it. Like they're aspiring to rise up the ranks in the East. And then my 5th tier is just bottomed out. Like they are, that's the Wizards.
The PU stinky tier.
Yeah, they're down there. But the Raptors were a team where I couldn't figure out to put them in tier 3 of my tier of confusion because they do confuse me a lot, or in my tier 4 of like they're kind of playing through a rebuild because the pieces are there in Toronto. And even though the offseason wasn't splashy, Brandon Ingram never played a game last season.
He was their offseason, right? Yeah.
Right. Like that's the offseason. So like my question for the Raptors is, what are expectations for this team? Like, is this a Raptors team entering the season internally with expectations of like, hey, we're a playoff team. We're trying to be top 6 in the East. Or are they a team like, hey, let's just try to finish top 10. We can get in the playing game. Anything can happen. Or is this a team that's kind of like, however this falls, even if things don't go right, we'll take that too because it actually benefits us in the long run.
I don't think the latter is on their minds this year at all. The last 2 years have been very tanky, and it hasn't really yielded a ton in terms of lottery luck. And I think in the new flattened lottery world, there's just not a whole lot of incentive to be so bad, especially when you just like already have a lot of good players on your team, and you can only get so far in the tank derby when you have the Wizards and the Jazz and the Nets out there, and among other teams. And so, yeah, like I think they are hoping to be a playoff team this year. I think that'd be like, okay, this was an awesome success. We make the top 6, great step forward. I think they'll be content if they're like 7-8 or even like a plucky 9 in like a competitive conference where they're above 500, and maybe it's just kind of like a morass of teams all kind of jockeying for position. Maybe 9th is like 2 or 3 games out of the 6th seed or whatever. I think they'd be fine with that. If they're like under 500 again and they can't quite figure things out, the fit's wrong, like I think that will go down as a disappointment. And like there is a real downside here if things go poorly, where the guys who I think a year from now are probably going to look a lot more favorable on their contracts, Emmanuel Quickley, Brandon Ingram, Scotty Barnes, Jakob Poeltl, maybe RJ Barrett, though I'm a little less sure there. We'll talk about him later. Like if it goes poorly, then all those guys are going to look like they're on even worse contracts than they look like they're on right now. And then things get really hard because like in theory, you might want to tear things down, but what are you getting for those guys? Is it even worth it when you have all these good players on the team? And so I think they're going to try to be pretty good. And frankly, I think they are like when I look at the Bucks, I do not see a roster full of guys that I'm like, yeah, I'm stoked to watch that guy play 15 minutes a night in the NBA as a rotation piece. I think the Raptors, yes, they need some internal growth from some guys to step into that role, whether it's Grady Dick or Jacoby Walter or Colin Murray Boyles as a rookie, who I think they're very high on. But I just think like they have too many good players. They're going to be able to stagger their lineups and have too many good players on the floor at all times for them to be outright bad. And I think if the chemistry is right and they kind of find the right mix of, the adaptation from Brandon Ingram and Scotty Barnes and Emmanuel Quickley not playing only 33 games like he did last year, I think this is a team that's going to win in the mid 40s and
Really?
probably surprise some people. I think the expectations outside of Toronto are like extremely low. I think hitting the Raptors over is probably a pretty wise move just because, again, they're deep and they have too many players who are worthy of minutes to not, I think, survive a regular season and pick up some wins along the way where depth is king. Did I make you feel any less confused about where the Raptors are at?
A little bit, maybe a little bit more optimistic about them, but that makes me go to my next question of like, in the hierarchy of the East, what range do you see the Raptors finishing in yourself? Because I know you mentioned that they're you think they're in that 4 to 10 range. And when I did my tiers, I broke that 4 to 10 up into 2 different ones there.
Okay.
So like for me, that tier 2 of like, if things break right, any of these teams could make it out the East. Magic, Hawks, Pistons, Bucks. Like those were my 4 I put there. Right. And then I had like Pacers, Celtics, Sixers, Heat, Raptors kind of all in that same bucket. But Raptors, like I said, could bounce between that tier with Pacers, Celtics, Sixers, Heat, or into that next one too, to go alongside teams like the Bulls and the Hornets, where I'm like, I don't know, but it didn't feel right putting them with the Bulls and the Hornets. Like they're just such a tricky team to me this year.
They're super weird. And I've said this before this week with our other guests that we've had on the show, Koo and Tony. Like, I think they're one of the harder teams to project because we haven't actually seen them play together. And so, like, all your analytical models aren't going to do anything to really project what this team is going to be. Brandon Ingram doesn't really have any recent tape, which, a lot of these analytical models kind of lean on to really project it. And so I think it is a bit of a mystery box. But to answer your question, like, I have it tiered out like Cavs, Knicks are kind of the clear 1-2, and the Magic, I think, could throw themselves into that mix. I think the Desmond Bane addition is a pretty big deal. They're kind of the top 3 for me. I think the Hawks, I'm a little more skeptical of than most seem to be, but I think they're probably like the top of that next tier. But I really do see, like, outside of maybe the Pacers, who I think are probably just going to be like a really fun, plucky 10th seed, and, we'll see if the Sixers can, get their stuff together. I don't know. They might, just with Tyrese Maxey and a healthy Jared McCain, be good enough to be in that 9-10 range. But I think other than that, all those teams are basically like, I don't know, ask me on whatever day who I think is better. Because I really think there's a lot of fluidity there. Pistons, we talked yesterday with Koo, I think them losing the Malik Beasley season that happened last year and trying to find a way to replicate that is going to be extremely hard. And they lost some other guys, and I don't love Karis LeVert. I don't love Duncan Robinson as the replacements. And I think there could be just like some setback potential for a team that overshot their station a little bit last year. The Bucks, again, I'm skeptical of the depth and how that carries through the regular season. The Heat, I have no idea. I'm talking about the Heat tomorrow with Dave Ramil. I got no clue what's going on there. I don't like that team very much. I don't like their mix, but in theory, Eric Spoelstra is a wizard. He could probably figure some good stuff out there. They could be the 4th seed if things really break right. I could also see them being the 10th seed and being a really ugly, nasty watch. And so, yeah, it is extremely fluid to me there. And that's why I'm doing this like series of shows this week, is I can't really figure it out either. But I do think the Raptors are like firmly in that mix. I don't think they're at the bottom of it. I don't think they're like on the brink of being part of the Hornets or Bulls tier. I think those teams are going to be abjectly terrible, specifically the Bulls. Like, I'm not getting fooled by last March, man. Not happening. That team is just like March merchants, if there ever was. Marchants, I guess, is what we can call them. Like, I don't really see them replicating what they did to close last year when nobody cared in the games they were playing. And Josh Giddey did the thing he does every March where he just becomes good after stinking for the first 4.5 months of every season. And so, yeah, like, where do the Raptors fall in there? I have no idea, but I think they are firmly in that mix one way or another. And if they're not, I think it would be a pretty grave disappointment.
I do have one more Raptors question for you, because I am curious. Which side of the ball do you think will the identity be formed more by? Like, is this going to be a stronger team defensively or offensively? And I would love to get your thoughts on that after this break.
Yeah, Camille, this is a question I've asked myself or asked my guests on the show like 100 times. I'm so excited you asked it to me. We're going to get my answer coming up in just 1 second. Yeah. So, Camille, before the break, you threw a question at me that I've been hurling at my guests left, right, and center over the course of the summer, because guests are the way we get through the summer on a daily podcast.
I know that's right.
So you asked me, what do I think the Raptors are going to be better at, offense or defense? I think it's a great question because, again, I don't really know. Last year on defense, they had a bit of a surprising run where they finished, kind of middle of the pack. Second half of the season, they were like near the top 10 for most of the year. The back 20 games of their schedule were like, go back and look at the teams they played in the final 20 games. It's hilarious, the teams they played down the stretch. It might be the easiest 20-game stretch anyone played all season long. And they did it while they were trying to lose games. It made for really compelling basketball, Camille. We had so much fun in those last 20 games. For me, I think like the defense was a little fool's gold because of the schedule it happened against. But I do think Scotty Barnes is just damn good defensively. And I think him and Jakob Poeltl, I've cited this stat a bunch, but when those two were on the floor last year for like 2,000 possessions together, they had a defensive rating the team had a defensive rating that would have equated to second in the NBA over the course of the whole season, behind only the Thunder. They were really good when those guys played, and they were playing with a lot of really bad defenders, RJ Barrett, Grady Dick, and a whole bunch of rookies who were getting a quarter of the minutes the team played. I think Brandon Ingram, while not a great defensive player, is long and functional, and it can just kind of like fill gaps with his arms in a way that they couldn't get from the shorter guys they were rolling out last year. I think Jacoby Walter, like really interesting defensive prospect. He's shown a lot, especially in summer league. Colin Murray-Boyles is like a really interesting defensive player as well, who I think is the rare rookie who stands a chance of being an impact defender from day one.
Yeah, I liked him a lot.
Yeah, Jamal Shed, obviously really nasty point of attack guy. And I think Emmanuel Quickley is actually like slightly better than average as well on that end for that position. And so I would guess they're like kind of middle of the pack on defense. I think like if I'm answering this, I think they're going to finish like 14th in both. Like, is that a cop out? I don't know. But like, it kind of feels like you add Ingram and Quickley, they're going to make a big jump from being the 26th or 27th ranked offense they were last year. Like, those are probably their two best offensive players all told. You add them to the mix, you're going to be a lot better. You factor in, Grady Dick not being totally overexposed as like the number 2 or 3 option when he was on the floor for long stretches of last year because of all the injuries. And I do think this is a team that can be pretty solid and very like adequate on both ends of the floor. If I had to guess, I'd say the defense by a smidge, but I think it's really splitting hairs. What about you?
Yeah, see, the thing about the Bucks, like you mentioned, like the names don't bring you like, man, I'm supposed to get excited about this? Like, what? Yeah. But I think that this roster, I think they do have depth. And I think the reason why I'm actually maybe even more excited about the 2025-26 Bucks than I was the 2024-25 Bucks is the fact that this is the first time in ages that they're young. Like, the Bucks have been old and slow. And when Doc Rivers came, he just kind of was like, yeah, we're an older team, so we have to try to play through our size. Like, let's try to use size to our advantage because we're not going to outrun any teams, which when you have a team with Giannis on it, initially sounds kind of crazy that you're not built in a way to take advantage of one of the most lethal players in transition, but the Bucks have prioritized veterans and just trying to play solid basketball. And they were old. And you saw last year some of the problems they had with like transition defense because they just didn't have the foot speed to get back. The Bucks took a turn when you saw an influx of youth into the roster again, into the lineup, I should say. Again, AJ Green, very high on. Gary Trent Jr., even though he's been in the league for a while, he came on the team as a young guy compared to who else was on the roster. And this upcoming season, without Chris Middleton, who is my guy, shout out to 22 forever. Love Chris Middleton. Without Chris, without Dame, who for all of the offensive genius that he has, he is a 6'1" point guard where defense has never been his strong suit. You don't have him on the roster anymore. You don't have a Brook Lopez who, for all of his shot blocking glory, just slow of foot at this big age, and you replace them with guys who can really get down to it defensively with, like I mentioned, Ryan Rollins. Even Kevin Porter Jr. showed some things on defense last year that surprised me. Kyle Kuzma, who I think is a big swing piece for this team because I don't think he should start for this Bucks team. I think he should go off the bench. And if he can play a role where that defense, where he uses that length, like it's advantageous to the Bucks. And I think for the Bucks to make a run in the East, the defense has to lead the way for them. And I think that they're built in a way where they can have a top 10 defense if everything falls right for them. So the offense, I expect to still be all right. Like I think the Bucks could finish. I should say this. If the Bucks really want a shot to compete, they have to finish top 10 in both offense and defense. And I think they have, with Point Giannis and the shooters, the ability to do that because this is a Bucks team that last year finished first in 3-point make percentage. They were just middle of the pack, lower towards that middle when it came to volume. So I do think the volume will increase this upcoming year with Point Giannis, with the shooters around him and being able to get out there and run and play some defense. I think defense leads the way for the Bucks. And again, that's part of why I'm higher on them, because just being able to run is going to help them out a lot from what they've had the last few years.
Yeah, I think I'd probably say the Bucks defense is a little better than the offense too. I mean, you lose Dame, and as much as like it didn't work with Dame and Giannis, I still think he just gives your offense just like so much more juice. The pull-up shooting, all of that. They're gonna miss, I think, having like a real legitimate pull-up shooting threat, on the ball who can run pick and roll in sort of a classic fashion. When things boil down to the half court, teams really lock in on Giannis. Like it's really gonna be on those shooters to be dead eye for it to really work. But yeah, I mean, Giannis is an incredible defensive player. I think him and Miles Turner will make it work in the front court, as much as Miles Turner maybe has taken some steps back on that end during his last couple of years in Indiana. But yeah, like I said, top 10 in both feels like a reach to me for the Bucks based on just sort of the mix of talent. And again, you're higher on the depth than I am, but it's I think both these teams could both just be very mid at both things, which hey, is pretty very fitting for the Eastern Conference, I guess.
Let me be clear. I'm not predicting that they finish top 10 in both. I'm saying if they want to take a step, that's what they have to do. Yeah. I think the defense ultimately, though, will finish higher than their offense.
Gotcha. Let's quickly hit on RJ Barrett, who I think I'm not sure how real any of these rumors have been, or how legit any of it's gone. It's offseason noise for stuff that didn't happen. It does seem like the Raptors have kind of telegraphed RJ Barrett's not going to be on the team, a couple years from now when his contract is up. And, if that's the case, then it stands to reason they're going to look to move him at some point this year, especially considering he's probably the least obvious fit of the key guys they have on the roster with the other key guys they have on the roster. The Bucks thing has been thrown around, and I do think RJ would really help the Bucks. I think he'd probably be instantly no worse than their third best player. Even though I'm not terribly high on RJ Barrett, I'm not terribly high on a lot of their other guys, as we've talked about here. I think he'd be an upgrade over Kevin Porter Jr. I think he'd be an upgrade over Gary Trent Jr. I think he'd be an upgrade over Kyle Kuzma. But for me, I just can't see where a trade happens here, because I don't see the Raptors wanting to take back Kyle Kuzma. That would basically be what it has to be around, right? It would be Kuzma, another small salary, probably maybe Ryan Rollins, and then whatever for Barrett. And I think, as much as I don't think the Raptors are out there trying to get the biggest possible haul for Barrett, I do think if they're going to trade him, it's because they're making the team make more sense. I've kicked around ideas with, say, the Dallas Mavericks, where they have all these forwards. So they're paying all of the forwards and centers all of the money as of today, recording today. PJ Washington, part of that group too. is there like a forward and a guard or a forward and a wing you can kind of turn RJ Barrett into, and they get a little extra ball handling and scoring to help with their backcourt, especially while Kyrie's gone? Like, that would make some sense. I don't think a Kyle Kuzma plus RJ plus whatever stuff has to be mixed in there deal makes any sense for either team, frankly, because I don't know if the Bucks have the stuff to really sweeten the pot, and I don't know if they'd want to sweeten the pot for a marginal enough upgrade in RJ Barrett. I don't know. Am I kind of getting, it seems like you're in agreement on this one, Camille?
I definitely am, because the only contract the Bucks really could have to throw out there is that Kyle Kuzma contract to try to match RJ Barrett's salary sum. And I think for the Bucks too, like, I think that with RJ Barrett can give you, especially the fact that he's making what, $27 million this year and next year too. Like, I think the Bucks,
30,
I think the Bucks would probably rather, instead of having just the one RJ Barrett, have this collection of Kevin Porter Jr., Gary Trent Jr., Ryan Rollins, because I think the main hope for the Bucks is that at least one of these guys pops. And if at least one of them does, like, it sets you off into a different place. Like, again, if Kevin Porter Jr. plays like the guy we saw in the regular season for the Milwaukee Bucks throughout the entire course of the season with bigger responsibility, more opportunity, he could be like a fringe all-star. I don't think he'll make the all-star game, but I think he'll be one of those names that people just kind of toss out there like, man, he's really been hooping. Like, just put him in the conversation, not making it, but like put him in the conversation. And I think if the Bucks are we're going to make a bet on at least one of these guys popping, they'd rather do that on the lower contract numbers right now than taking that swing on the RJ Barrett when they also still do have a Kyle Kuzma to account for.
Well, this podcast ended the way it started, with you believing more in the Milwaukee Bucks than me. That's fine. It's totally fine that we have these differing opinions. That's what makes basketball talk so fun. And it's always fun with you, Camille. This was a blast. Thank you so much for taking the time. I forgot one last thing. Who you got, Raptors or Bucks in the Eastern Conference standings this year? Who you got?
I got the Bucks, but I will say that this conversation has made me kind of reevaluate the Raptors a little bit. Like, I do think that they're going to be a bit better than some people might expect based on some of the depth things that you pointed out. And I really do like Scotty Barnes too. So I think there is something to that. So although you might not have walked away thinking the Bucks are going to be remarkably better, I'm walking away thinking a little bit differently about the Raptors.
Finally, my really good knack for doing argumentative speeches in 5th grade has paid off in the real world, and I've convinced you of a thing. That's fantastic. I'm gonna just go out there. I'm not taking the Raptors over all the teams we're talking this week, because I'm taking them over the Pistons. I'm not taking over maybe even the Heat, but I'm taking them over the Bucks. Damn it! I think they're better than the Bucks. I think the depth is going to get them there. I believe, and I do not fear the deer, as we have talked about, but that's okay. I will happily eat plenty of crow if, in fact, we get to the end of the year and Giannis has done the thing where he wins a lot of games. Because, like, look, that could very well happen.
We might need to have a friendly wager over here, Sean.
Good. I will. Hey, we're something with the Lions and the Packers. I'll wear a Packers jersey. You wear a jersey of my beloved Lions, my new favorite sports team, the Detroit Lions. Yeah, we can totally do that.
We'll figure it out, but we'll have to find a wager for who finishes higher in the East, the Bucks or the Raptors.
Sounds great. And hopefully, I've said this earlier this week to the people we've talked to, I haven't done a lot of crossovers in recent years because the Raptors have been sad, and I don't want to talk about the teams that they're up against in the tank derby because that's depressing. I used to do crossovers all the time with the teams the Raptors were competing with nobly, and I think we're going to get that again this year. So hopefully, Camille, we can check in a few times throughout the season, and it's always a blast because you're the best. Anything you want to promote for the good people out there?
Just make sure I keep checking out Locked On Bucks, Locked On Raptors, the Locked On Network as a whole. I'm also on Locked On NBA Game Night on Mondays with Nick Allstaff from Locked On Mavs. So check that out.
Yeah, that show, it's 50% excellent with you, Nick.
Don't get us fired now, Sean.
It's fine. Me and Nick have an understanding. We're going to leave it there. You can find Locked On Raptors, Locked On Bucks, wherever you get your shows. Join the Locked On Raptors Discord server. Link in the description of the podcast. Come hang out. Great place to talk ball with pals. And we'll be back again on Thursday on the Raptors side of things, talking Miami Heat with Dave Ramil. See if that's to look forward to. Thanks so much for hanging out. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.